In the middle of the Swanton Valley, there's a farm stand. The produce is grown in the field behind it on the site of the Laurel Grove Inn, which was the terminus of the railway that came out from Santa Cruz until the 1906 earthquake bankrupted it. There's a plaque there that says that the last train ran on August 16th, 1920. In the early morning hours of Sunday, August 16th, 2020, I was in Davenport and saw the lightning storm coming from across the bay. When the sun came up, the biggest fire in the area was up at the county line. They were hitting it with air tankers, so I figured it'd be out in a day or two. Meanwhile, it made for a great sunset Sunday night as I drove out to the bluffs above Waddell Beach to watch it. Monday morning, the weather had changed, and the planes couldn't fly. Helicopters were doing bucket drops, but it looked increasingly futile as the fire kept growing. On Tuesday, it was smoky at my home on Swanton Road, and I began wetting down the wood siding of the house. When I went out to the bluffs that night, the fire had burned all the way to Waddell Beach. There were a couple strike teams there, but it would have taken more than that to stop what happened, as the fire jumped Waddell Creek and raced up towards Last Chance. I went home and was up all night preparing. As a retired firefighter, it made sense to stay and do what I could to save the house. The fire front arrived Wednesday afternoon, and I stood on the back deck hosing down embers until I ran out of water, driving out through flames to Davenport, where a black cloud containing all my worldly possessions filled the sky, turning red as the sun set beneath it. My night was spent in Bonnie Doon helping old neighbors get ready for the fire's arrival, and in the morning I drove back out to Swanton to get some closure. Every house on the road was a foundation, the main house on the property gone. Then I looked over and saw that my home was still there, virtually untouched. It made no sense. The fire had consumed the hillside right up to the wood deck and stopped. A 5-foot-tall wood pile was a carpet of white ash, but no embers had ignited the house. I felt that credit was due to the spirits of the land more than myself. The house to the east of mine was gone, and none of the chickens had gotten very far when I'd opened their coop. There were still hot spots burning, stumps and roots that fire crews normally would extinguish, but there were none. I hauled buckets of water from the pool, but some just wouldn't go out. When they were at least contained and not a threat to the house even if it got windy, I snuck through the roadblock into town to get provisions and clean up. My son learned to drive on the riding mowers of my landlord, who owned the boardwalk, so he called my place the Country Boardwalk. The one remaining mower and trailer I used for the bucket dump ride, hauling water from the pool to hit the hot spots. I would drive the Jeep into Davenport to get a cell signal, but when it broke down, I had to change over to the green flash. On the 9th day, a fire engine finally arrived on Swanton Road, and I flagged them down to put out the snag that was still smoldering up above bucket range. Fire crews started arriving regularly, and a strike team camped out on the lawn. Across the road, there'd been a redwood tree with a burn scar from the last big fire in 1948. It was the one that burned for 9 days, now a black skeleton. After a few weeks, I started venturing farther from home to explore the area in the dark. One time I went up to the top of the ridge to the north, where the fire had come from. Redwoods were black toothpicks, the standing dead. A barn that had contained a covered wagon of incalculable value was now a white carpet of debris. As the sun set, I felt grateful to be able to witness such transformation. And I was transformed too, more deeply connected with the land and community. Back home, the fire crews had been replaced by tree crews, who cut down everything within reach of the power line. I tried to defend the still living ones, but they all eventually came down. The valley was filled with the sound of chainsaws, and I would escape out to the coast in the green flash. The last time I rode the country boardwalk was September 14th. I dumped water on the smoldering stump of Mordor, then drove the mower up to the top of the ridge to the west to see what remained of the houses there. I was about to learn that I would lose my home after all, as my landlord reclaimed the house. It would be a lesson in the impermanence of everything in this world. The only consolation being that every ending is a beginning, the only meaning found in being alive while we're here.